Steve here. It's the show where I answer your questions, and this week my first question comes from Umar Sories. I put this to Captain Andy, and you know I've been saying this for years, so it's not new. My question is, how can every progressive, or feminist if you want, claim Lacey is wrong for her reaching out to have discussions with these monsters while we let the Kevin Logans and Christy Winters do it? How can anyone say there's a real difference, especially when I watch these hangouts and see how everyone is so polite to each other, including the monsters from the other side? The progressives are giving these creatures a platform, same as Lacey Green, and it accomplishes pretty much the same thing. Nothing. I have seen these monsters also go back to their groups and channels and use these hangouts to legitimize their hate and sexism and racism. I have been on the end of progressive channels defending Gamergaters they have hangouts with on the basis that it could not be proved that specific Gamergater engaged in the things the group has been thoroughly documented as doing and still do to this day. Yet we are going to hop on all over Lacey Green for doing something I've seen too much of the progressive community do far too often? How does that work? Note, I agree with everything you and Captain Andy said about the Lacey Green video, but I also think it's true of any progressive who chooses to do hangouts or video debates with these monsters. Well, you're not wrong. The distinction I would draw between what Kevin or Christy or Mike Rowlands or Demotivator or other people do and what Lacey Green is doing is that even though Kevin and Christy and company will talk to those people and will go on their hangouts and will even occasionally host hangouts on their own channels for some of those people, they never, and they are polite to them. You know, they treat them like guests, or they act as guests when they're on their channels, and they try to make it as civil as possible. But they never claim that they're anything other than awful people. And they never make excuses for them. And I understand what you're saying, that even engaging with them, even interacting with them at all is an act of legitimization and has the effect of making these people look like they're reasonable or that they ought to be spoken to with respect or whatever. And I completely get that. But what Lacey Green is doing is basically denying that these are bad people. I've never seen Kevin or Christy or any of the other folks that you're probably talking about deny that these are bad people, or deny that they're dangerous, deny that they're harmful. Lacey is doing that. Lacey seems to be basically pretending that the people she's talking to, who are just awful, who are some of the worst of the worst, she seems to be just pretending that there's nothing wrong with what they do, that it's just a difference of opinion. You know, being a member of a hate group is just a difference of opinion, and we just need to build bridges, and we'll reach a better understanding, and then everybody will get along. That's all this is. It's just disagreement. She's doing that. I don't see Christy and Kevin and that group, of which I'm a part, doing that. I don't see them saying, oh, these aren't such bad guys. Now, they do interact with them, they do engage with them. I personally think that that's a waste of time in most cases, and I don't do it under any circumstances. But I do think that there is very definitely a distinction between what Lacey Green is doing and what Christy and Kevin, etc. are doing. But that's just me, and I think you probably disagree, Umar. But on a personal level, as far as my own conduct, I am completely in agreement with you. Malevolent divinity. So a thing happened recently that bothers me. It involves guns, what appears to be mental health issues, and the fact that that's never a good combination. Had respect for them, as I believe you did. They were cool, even if not always exactly on the level, but I'm finding difficulty separating politics from the issue. It feels like there should have been more that we as a society should have been able to do. On one hand, it's an example of why we should be enacting more reasonable control, one that hits far closer to home than any I've seen ever due to the fact that I've exchanged comments with the individual. On the other, I don't know. 30,000 a year, yet somehow it's more confusing when I know the faces. Should we have seen this coming? Should anyone have? Would they be annoyed if I said that they probably shouldn't have been allowed to own a firearm? For those of you who don't know what Malevolent Divinity is referencing there, that's a reference to the recent tragedy involving the skeptic feminist. And I won't go into the details of that here. You can look that up for yourself. I will say, since the subject has been brought up, the family of the victim, Heather, has set up an official memorial fund on GoFundMe, and I will link to that in the description of this video. So if anyone watching wants to donate to help Heather's family pay her final expenses and any other sort of associated costs with her death, you can go there and you can contribute whatever you're able or comfortable contributing. And I would encourage anybody to do that. It is tough when it's someone you know. As far as I know, the person who shot Heather, who we knew online as Russian Deadpool, had a legitimate reason to have a gun. I think his job was that he was an armed guard of some sort. At least that's the most recent information I have. He and I were not super close. We didn't talk a lot. We knew each other and interacted semi-regularly, but we weren't like super close. So last I heard, he had a job, or being armed was part of his job. We can talk about, obviously, maybe that was a wrong decision. He should not have been in that situation, perhaps. But it's impossible to tell. I mean, when you say, should we have known, should we have seen this coming? That's a question you can't help but ask yourself after something like this. That's a question that when something like this happens and it's with someone you know and you think, I never expected this to happen. Should I have seen this coming? I mean, who knows? Who knows? Adam Rainstopper. Well, Steve, in addition to the tragic events you already know about, another rock star has committed suicide. I've been a musician all my life, played in lots of bands, been on some very serious drugs, been to prison, been homeless, lost a lot of friends. I am all too aware of the tortured artist trope and where it actually comes from. And yet, I am still here. Granted, we are more likely to hear about famous people, but big rock stars seem to commit suicide at a higher rate than the general population. Do you think this may be something about wealth itself and the specific lifestyle one lives when one makes it big, and the expectations put on one when one has achieved a certain degree of notoriety? Sorry, Steve, I know my questions are always horrible. No, your questions are always great, man. A little dark, but no, they're all. I never really mind answering them, even if I feel like I'm tiptoeing into a minefield, because I think you really raise some interesting issues. So don't feel bad about your questions. I think fame maybe does have something to do with it. I think there's certainly an added level of pressure when you become famous. I mean, it's easy for someone like me, who has never been famous and has never had that level of wealth and notoriety, to say like, oh, come on, it's not so bad. You got money in the bank. If you didn't want to, you'd never have to work another day in your life. What's the pressure? But when you become famous, especially when you become famous for being an artist, and there are so many eyes on you all the time, and there are so many expectations placed on your shoulders by fans, by critics, by people who have a financial interest in you, by record companies, by managers, by agents, by people who depend on you continuing to be successful so that they can be successful. I think a lot of that is almost impossible to prepare for. And even when you have been in that spotlight for many years, as Chris Cornell was, if in addition to that pressure you have some issues maybe with mental health or with drug abuse or whatever, I think it can be difficult to deal with. I would not envy anyone in that position. I would not wish that on myself or on anyone I cared about. And I think the fact that of course we hear more about famous suicides because they're famous people, and that's probably the main reason. But I think you're right. I think the wealth and the fame have an exacerbating effect on problems that we may already have, and they also bring problems of their own and added pressures that only make things worse. I think you're right. The Nightmare Rider. Hey, Steve. When I started dating my partner, she shared a great deal of information to me on the subject of communism, which I have recently taken to researching due to the huge amount of Red Scare levels of alarmism that still goes on today about the political ideology. On the basis of communist theory, workers sharing the means of production, even distribution of wealth, all with the end goal of creating a mutually beneficial stateless society. How does it align with your personal political beliefs? I don't know as much about communism as you probably do, or certainly as your girlfriend knows, or as many people do, but I have long felt that in theory, it sounds like a nice idea. You know, in theory, it sounds like the sort of thing that I would get behind. But I can't get away from the fact that in practice, it has never worked. And I know, most of the communist states that have been established have veered quite far from the ideal version of communism pretty quickly. You know, they instead of growing toward becoming stateless societies where there's, you know, widespread economic and social equality, they basically become dictatorships where one person or one party has a monopoly on all of the political and military power, and it actually turns out to not be such a great place to live. And I can't help but notice that has happened pretty much every time anyone has attempted to implement communism on a national level. So it may be a wonderful theory, it may be a wonderful idea on paper, and if human nature were such that we could carry out that theory as it has been proposed, as it was intended, it might be a great thing. I mean, on paper, I think it looks pretty good, but in practice, it really doesn't seem like we're up to it. Thomas Swords, if you had to rewrite the Constitution, what would you add? What would you delete? I'd start by shit-canning the Second Amendment, but that's just me. I don't think I would get rid of the Second Amendment completely. I would rewrite it, however, to make it completely clear and unambiguous, or as unambiguous as possible, that gun regulations, that gun laws prohibiting gun ownership by certain people or in certain circumstances were completely fine. You know, this interpretation of the Second Amendment that a lot of gun nuts propose, where it's basically, oh, the government's not allowed to stop anyone from owning any firearms. The Constitution says shall not be infringed, and that's the way it should be interpreted. I would definitely amend the Second Amendment to make it clear that, oh no, states are allowed to regulate that stuff. States have an obligation for public safety and public health to regulate firearms and to take steps to make sure that the proliferation of firearms does not become a danger to public safety and public health. And gun laws are completely fine. That's what I would do. And also, I would add an extensive, far-reaching equal rights amendment. I would make it explicit in the Constitution that discrimination on the basis of race, gender identity, sexual orientation, ability or disability, age, immigration status, you name it, just run down the list, would be prohibited. You know, and a lot of that has been established in law already, often by either state law or by court precedent, but I would nail it down in the Constitution. Discrimination on the basis of being in a protected class is completely off the table. That's what I would do. A very robust, far-reaching equal rights amendment. Crowbro, hey Steve, do you think white poverty is fueling the overt racism and hostility to minorities like trans people? I don't think that poverty makes people racist. There are plenty of people who don't live in poverty who are super racist. The President of the United States at the moment being a prime example. But I do think that poverty can make you feel like you are an outsider. Poverty can make you feel alienated. Poverty can make you feel forgotten and put upon and marginalized. And if you also have racial biases or sexist biases or prejudices against trans people, gay people, etc., I think that feeling of being beleaguered, of being persecuted because of your low economic status can amplify those prejudices and can make it a lot easier for someone to say out loud some very racist and very bigoted things about other groups, because if someone says, hey, you know why you're down there? It's because of those people over there. You know, it can be a very potent weapon for propaganda. If you can look at poor people and you can say, you know, the reason you're poor, it's because the people in charge don't care about you. They care about those people over there. It's their fault. I think poverty plays a role in that way, but I don't know if I would say that it fuels racism. It makes racism a little easier. It amplifies it. It exacerbates it. But when you say fuel, I feel like that makes it sound to a certain ear. It makes it sound like poverty makes people racist, and I don't think that's the case. But I do think that being in a desperate situation can make people more likely to be receptive to ugly ideas, and I think that's probably what's happening. Joe McClory. Earlier this week, a friend of mine posted your Breakfast Club Why Do They Call It Feminism video on her Facebook wall, and it got me thinking about legacy. For example, it seems unlikely that Hannibal Buress will do anything in his career that will overshadow him shining a light on Bill Cosby's multiple rapes. Do you often think on your impact? How would you feel if your Breakfast Club video ended up being the thing you were most remembered for? Is there any work you have done that you would be ashamed if it ended up being what you are most remembered for? And how would you feel if you ended up with what may well be Hannibal Buress's legacy of being remembered for helping people to see the truth of a bad person that they may have otherwise looked up to? You know what? If that Why Do They Call It Feminism video winds up being my legacy, or I mean, if legacy is even the proper term to use, I would be fine with that. I think that's a good video. I don't think it's not the best video I've ever done. I think anytime you look back at anything that you've done from a few years in the future, you know, it's always easy to point things out and say, oh, I wish I had said that instead of that. I wish I hadn't said that. I wish I had said this better. I wish I had made this point in this way. You know, but on the whole, that's not a terrible video to be known for. You know, if that winds up being the video that most people have seen of mine, I'm okay with that. There are worse things to be remembered for. I would much rather be remembered for that or for other stuff that I have done on YouTube than be remembered as someone who was abusive or harassing or picked on teenagers or trolled my way to 1 million subscribers or did any of the other things that people in the toxic sort of corner of the YouTube atheist skeptical community have done to get much bigger audiences than I have. But at least I have the comfort of knowing that not a single view or a single subscriber I have ever earned has come because I abused somebody else, or I harassed somebody else, or I was a troll, or I doxed somebody, or I picked a fight with somebody, or any of the other awful, just inexcusable bullshit that people who often attack me have done, you know. I can say, you know, it might not be the biggest audience, but it's an audience I didn't have to demean women and say racist shit and attack trans people and gay people to get. And that's an okay legacy. It's a very minor legacy, but it's one that I am perfectly comfortable with. You know what else I'm perfectly comfortable with? Getting out of here and jumping straight to the next segment, which is a little something I like to call
The Lightning Round.
Nix Alexander. Hey Steve, this is fucking trippy, man. I hate bananas, you hate bananas, I hate yogurt, you hate yogurt. Trippy, right? That makes you question the whole of reality right there. So here's my question. Do you hate cheesecake too? Or is that just me, the only human person in the world apparently who hates that glue? Yes, the universe is safe. Reality is safe. I love cheesecake. I don't think you're the only one who hates it. I know other people who hate it, but that is where we differ. I actually enjoy cheesecake quite a bit. Troubleshooter 125. So if Vince McMahon doesn't qualify as a great TV villain, who are your faves? There are so many great ones. I would say maybe Gul Dukat from Star Trek Deep Space Nine. Q, a lot of Star Trek villains. Q is a great one. Who's another? Skeletor. I mean, come on. The 5-year-old in me will always say that Skeletor is a great TV villain. Who's another good one? Luther Mahoney from Homicide: Life on the Street. Luther Mahoney was a long-running antagonist, sort of a recurring villain on Homicide, one of my favorite shows, one of the great cop shows ever, and I would definitely put him up there. Luther Mahoney was such a bastard. I would put him on the list as well. Ahoy Yerno, lightning round. Do you like lightning? Like, do you get out of bed in the middle of the night to watch a beautiful lightning storm? I love it. I don't get out of bed to watch a lightning storm, but I do enjoy watching a storm. It's a nice way to spend sort of a quiet summer night. You know, turn off the TV, turn off all the lights, stand by the window or stand out, you know, on the back deck, you know, and sort of look out at the rain and the lightning. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's wonderful. I haven't done that for a while. Next time there's a storm, I should do that. Wishes you sweet dreams. Hey, Steve, the freedom of religion, First Amendment could be dubbed the freedom to be wrong. Your thoughts, please? Thanks. Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. I think if you reduce them down, all of the specific freedoms guaranteed in the First Amendment are basically the same thing. It all boils down to freedom of expression. You know, freedom of thought, freedom of conscience. These are just different ways of saying the same thing. So yes, you could view religion as the freedom to be wrong. Because even if you are of a particular religion, You presumably think that people of other religions are wrong. But if you believe in the First Amendment, you believe that they have the right to practice whatever religion they are, even though they're wrong. So yes, I think absolutely that's a way you could look at it. Lucas Hackett, I know I'm already late for this, but I need to know something from you. Mac or PC? PC? PC. HP Pavilion, to be exact. Dragonface013. Steve, lightning round question for you, I guess. Do you have a favorite novel / novels? My favorite novel since my early 20s has been The Great Gatsby. I love the story. I love the tragedy of it. I love the writing. I think F. Scott Fitzgerald's writing is just gorgeous. Just some of the most beautiful writing in the English language, I think. So I would put that very high. As far as more recent stuff, about 10 years ago, 15 years ago actually, probably now, I read Michael Chabon's novel, The Amazing Adventures of Cavalier and Clay, that has stuck with me ever since, which is a great novel if you like superheroes or comic stuff, because it's a fictional story, but it takes place in the 30s and 40s during the dawn of superhero comics. It's a really, really wonderful book. I would recommend that as well. Corey Donaldson, is it really necessary to respond to a hateful comment on a Facebook post or a YouTube video, even though you feel very fired up and want to verbally kick the ass of the hateful commenter? Well, that's up to you, of course. I never think it's necessary, actually. And usually if a comment is really like vitriolic and really aggressive and hostile, I don't respond to it at all. The only time I respond to such comments is when I have thought of a response of my own that is just too clever in my mind to resist, and I just have to say something. But usually, even if it really pisses me off, I don't respond to those types of comments, because as I was saying earlier in my answer when talking about Umar's question in the very first question, I think attention and engagement is what people like that want. They want you to talk to them. So if you ignore them, or better yet, if you block them or delete their comment, oh, that's not what they want. They don't like that. So that's what I do. John Brockman, so I'm assuming you've started hanging out since I tweeted at you both. Is Andrew Torres a good bowler? How often do you get down to DC and tour the museums? Which is your favorite? Andrew and I have not had a chance to hang out yet, sadly. We have not gone bowling yet, so I can't report on his bowling prowess. I don't get down to DC and tour the museums as nearly as often as I would like. I was last there to see the museums in, I think it was February. And I was actually there with Danielle Muscato. I got to meet Danielle Muscato for the first time in person, and we went to the Air and Space Museum. She was lovely enough to indulge me, and I said, can we go to the Air and Space Museum? And she said, sure. So we spent a few hours there, and the Air and Space Museum is one of my favorite places in the entire world. So it is definitely my favorite, and I wish I got to go there more often. Rainulus Aurelius, oh, and if you're such a respectful dude, why you swear all the time? Oh boy, you got me there. If I'm talking to someone who I know doesn't like swearing, then I don't swear. You know, if I'm on someone else's channel or someone else's podcast where I know that swearing is not allowed or swearing is frowned upon, then I don't swear. But on my own channel, when I make the rules, and I'm speaking to a general audience, not speaking to one particular person, I sometimes swear. I really don't think I swear all that much. I swear when I feel it's necessary or when I feel it's appropriate. But I mean, I don't think I've sworn very much at all in this video. Maybe a little bit here and there. Fuck, I don't know. I just did it. See? And I did that on purpose. Full disclosure. I don't think I swear that much. But I don't think swearing is inherently disrespectful. But I do think that if someone asks me not to, you know, and I'm under their roof or under their rules, or I'm speaking to someone who I know doesn't like it, I don't. I think that's pretty respectful. Jordan P. Oh, wait, never mind. I skipped one. Sorry, Jeremy. It's Jeremy Miller, actually. I was jumping straight to Jordan. Jeremy Miller, are there any good reasons to watch an anti-feminist video or channel? No. No. There is not a single good reason to watch an anti-feminist video. For the same reason that there's no good reason to watch a flat earther's video or a creationist's video or a KKK member's video or a neo-Nazi's video or a video from a member of any other hate group. Oh God, he just compared anti-feminists to the KKK. Yes, they're a hate group. They're an anti-woman, sexist, misogynist hate group. And there's no reason to pay attention to them at all. So no, there's no reason to watch any of their videos. Jordan P. Hey Steve, a not so serious question. I notice anti-feminists say feminism is cancer a lot. Why is that, Steve? Shouldn't feminism be more of a Libra, balance and harmony? Yeah, you're absolutely right. And it just goes to show what I was saying in last week's video, and I will happily reiterate it here, and that is anti-feminists don't know shit about feminism. They talk shit about something that they don't understand. Because you're right, it's not a cancer, it's a Libra. It's all about balance and equality. That's a great, that's actually that's actually really clever. I really like that. Feminism isn't cancer, it's a Libra. Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. I hope that catches on. That's it for the questions, everybody. That's the last one. It is time now for the shout out. And the shout out this week goes, it actually goes to something that really doesn't need my help. The thing I'm going to shout out, I think already has a much larger audience than my stuff does, but I'm going to shout it out anyway because one of the stories in the last week or so from the skeptic community that has really had a lot of us rolling our eyes and just beating our heads against the wall is this ridiculous hoax paper on the conceptual penis that was written about in Skeptic magazine and was published in a pay-to-play journal by Peter Boghossian was involved in it, and Michael Shermer published about it in Skeptic magazine. And they wrote this fake paper supposedly to disprove or undermine the field of gender studies. And they said, see, we wrote this bogus paper and we got it published in a journal, and that disproves gender studies somehow. And they're really just making asses of themselves and showing themselves to be sexist fools. And it's well, I have a lot of thoughts on it, but someone else has a lot of thoughts on it. And that's why I'm recommending not only that you listen to the Serious Inquiries Only podcast, just as a general rule, because it's an awesome podcast every week, and you should be listening to it regularly, but specifically listen to the newest episode of Serious Inquiries Only, because host Thomas Smith is joined as his guest by Eli Bosnick, friend of the channel, great guy, who spends the show responding to the conceptual penis paper, debunking it with facts and passion. It is awesome. It is a wonderful thing to behold. So go listen to Serious Inquiries Only, listen to it just in general, and also specifically listen to the newest episode with guest Eli Bosnick, where they talk about the conceptual penis paper and why it is embarrassing horseshit that people like Shermer and Boghossian and fucking Richard Dawkins, who retweeted it and seemed to think that it was this wonderful thing, should be embarrassed about. So there you go. Give it a listen. That's the shout out. I also want to tell you, as I always do, to give a listen to the Let Me Listen family of podcasts. These are podcasts that are created and produced and co-hosted in most cases by my very good friend Jason Harding, Jason with a D, the puppet master of Opinionville. There's a whole bunch of awesome podcasts in the Let Me Listen family, including Let Me Finish, American Monsters, Filmtastic Voyage, Cinetific, 3 for Adventure, and my personal favorite, because it's the one that I'm on, Late Seating, which is the belated movie review podcast co-hosted by Jason and me, where we take a classic movie, we give it a fresh review, and we decide for ourselves whether or not it lives up to its reputation, whether that reputation is good or bad. And in our newest episode that goes up today, the very day this video is being published, we will be reviewing the infamously awful Paul Verhoeven, Joe Esterhaus director-writer vehicle starring Elizabeth Berkley and, sadly, Kyle MacLachlan, Showgirls. We're reviewing Showgirls. We're reviewing Showgirls. We watched Showgirls on purpose, and we reviewed it for the new episode of Late Seating. We suffered, so the least you can do is enjoy our suffering in the form of entertainment, in the form of the newest episode of the Late Seating podcast. You can listen to the newest episode of Late Seating, where we review Showgirls. You can listen to all of the past episodes of Late Seating and all of the episodes of all of the wonderful Let Me Listen podcasts by going to letmelistenpodcast.com. That's it for me, everybody. I am out of here once again. Please remember to leave a comment on this video asking me your question for next time. You can ask me anything about anything. Nothing is too serious, nothing is too silly, but in order for me to do this, you have to ask. So please do comment on this video and ask me your question for the next video. Thank you so much for watching as always, and I'll see you next time. Take care, everybody. Hey folks, one more thing before I go. I hope you enjoyed this one. If you did, please like, share, and subscribe. And also, please consider helping me to make more videos like this one by supporting this channel through Patreon. You can go to patreon.com/Steve Shives to become a patron of this channel. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.